Hello friends, and welcome to Ask the Rev Wednesdays. I'm Marshall Brown, the senior pastor here at Grace Presbyterian. Ask the Rev Wednesdays is when you ask your questions, and I do my best to answer them biblically and theologically. This week's question is actually a follow-up to the sermon. If you were in the sermon or heard the sermon on Sunday, I talked about the danger of over-desires. James chapter 1 verse 14 says, "But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desires." And we said that that word desires is actually translating the Greek word epithumia. Thumia is desires, epa means over, so it's over desires. And over desire is not so much a desire for a bad thing, but to over desire a good thing, to desire badly. And how do we identify those over desires, which the verse goes on to say, the next verse, that have the possibility to destroy and ruin our lives? How do we identify the over desires? Because we said that each of us have different ones. We're all motivated differently. So first thing, I'm with my whiteboard here today, and again, what I was trying to say is this is a picture of an iceberg. Can't you tell? An iceberg, right? And you may know that 2/3 of an iceberg are below the surface. This is the water, and then there's the overt sin up here. But what really motivating we have to deal with is the over desire. This is the thing that can destroy us, is what's below the over desire. So how do we identify our over desires? Well, I am glad you asked, and this is the work of a lifetime, but two things can help get us started. The first is good friends. You got to have somebody you trust and someone who is wise. But if you really are serious about this question, what are my over desires? Go to a friend, a trusted spiritual friend, a wise friend, and just say, what do you see in my life? What do you see as being the motivating forces in my life? And be prepared to hear an answer that you might not want to hear, but you've got to go in non-defensively, non-reactionary, willing to hear what they would say. It's got to be somebody you trust, somebody who's wise. But when you look at me, when you see the way I behave over the course of months and years, what do you really see? So the first way to help identify over desires is to ask someone who really loves you. Sometimes when you're with me alone, ask me about a friend of mine who's done this for me. But second, another way to do it yourself is actually to use your emotions. Like, what are the things that get me fired up, and what do they say about what is beneath? Okay, again, you've got what happens up here, and I'll come back and give an example. What does it reveal about what's going on below? So now one thing I like to do is what I call shag slag. And you see shag slag? It's just an acronym for different emotions that we all feel. Shame, hurt, anger, gladness, sadness, loneliness, fear, afraid, and guilt, when we're guilty. Shag slag. And so when something happens, what is it that I feel about this, and what does it reveal and point to about an over desire, something that is really motivating? Let's just take an easy example. Let's just say, for instance, that your spouse, my wife, says to me, "Marshall, did you take the garbage out?" And it's been a day or two and I haven't done it. "Did you take the garbage out?" And I snap and I say, and I share a cross word. I react sharply, which is the overt sin. Okay, you don't talk to your wife like that. Okay, but what's on beneath that? Okay, though a couple things in that moment, a couple things that I'm tempted to feel. I do feel are shame. I didn't do something. I was supposed to do something. A good husband should know to do this, to take the trash out. And in this moment, I feel shame. But I also feel anger. I feel anger because I'm being challenged in this area. And so those two emotions, in my case, shame and anger for this instance, point to something underneath, which in my case is a longing for approval, to be a good husband, to be a good caretaker, to be someone who, when is asked to do something, takes the trash out. And so, if I were to ask my wife, she might be able to say that, but she's my friend in that scenario. But also these emotions can help us point to the things that are really motivating, what some of our over desires are. So that's a great question. It again is the work of a lifetime. You don't come to these answers quickly. I actually developed a list of these, and it took me 6 months to a year thinking through these things on a daily basis to come up with this. So anyway, how do you identify your over desire? One, look to your friends, and then two, to look to your emotions and see what they point to that is beneath. Something that might be small, like snapping at a spouse, but is significant what's going on. In my case, a longing for approval to be a good husband. But anyway, that's Ask the Rev Wednesdays. Hope that's helpful, and we might even continue this a little bit next week. Thanks. Lord be with you.